In the wake of Ukraine's decision to cut off Russian gas supplies to Europe, there were hopes that the continent would finally end its reliance on Russian energy. However, recent data from Politico reveals a surprising shift in these dynamics. Despite Ukraine's efforts to halt Russian gas exports, the latest figures indicate that Europe is now importing Russian gas at a record pace in 2025. This unexpected trend poses a challenge to European countries, which have long accused Moscow of using its oil and gas exports to fund its war against Ukraine. According to Politico, in the first 15 days of 2025, the European Union's 27 countries imported a staggering 837,300 metric tons of liquefied natural gas, LNG, from Russia. This marks a record high, surpassing last year's 760,100 tons during the same period. This surge in imports has raised concerns that Western nations are not doing enough to limit Russia's financial resources as its war enters its fourth year. Kyiv, in an effort to target Moscow's economy, refused on January 1st to extend the agreement that had previously halted the flow of Russian gas through Ukraine to the EU. Countries like Slovakia and Hungary, heavily reliant on the Ukrainian pipeline route, have been lobbying for the renewal of this deal. They warn that they might face skyrocketing costs for LNG if the agreement isn't revived. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico, with his pro-Kremlin stance, has even threatened to cut electricity supplies to Ukraine and reduce support for refugees if Kyiv doesn't agree to resume the transit.
In the second breath, I say very clearly, if this problem is not solved, the government of the Slovak Republic will shortly take tough reciprocal measures, which I will talk about in a moment. I am talking about the supply of electricity for so-called emergency situations. If I am not mistaken, Slovakia is probably the only one capable of supplying electricity to Ukraine within 30 minutes. Otherwise, the power grid may collapse. Again, it is a rather harsh reciprocal measure. But did Mr. Zelensky ask us whether we would not be short of 500 million euros? And then he corrupted. He said that they would give that 500 million from Russian assets on condition that we vote for NATO membership for Ukraine.
Meanwhile, other EU nations are urging the bloc to impose sanctions on Russian LNG, which has been flowing in large quantities since Moscow cut off pipeline deliveries, using energy as a weapon in the ongoing conflict. The juxtaposition of Ukraine's decision to halt Russian gas shipments with Europe's continued importation of Russian LNG underscores the stark reality. The EU's dependence on Russian energy is far from over. This situation highlights the internal divisions within the EU, with some countries pushing for tougher sanctions on Russia, while others focus on securing their energy supplies. In response, since the start of the war, the EU has worked to reduce its reliance on Russian energy by increasing imports of gas from Norway, as well as LNG from Qatar and the United States. In November, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen even endorsed the idea of purchasing more US energy as a substitute for Russian supplies. Yet despite these efforts, one fact remains clear. Europe's appetite for Russian energy continues unabated, even as Ukraine strives to block these crucial imports.